Hi everybody and welcome to our first tie-dye video. Today we're going to be covering basics in spirals. So to start, you guys are going to need your tie-dye kit with all the dyes, and then you're going to need gloves and rubber bands, and then you're going to need a tablecloth because as you can see here, it gets a little messy. Today's helper is Rayanne. For this video, we're going to be using Tulip brand dye that starts with dye powder in the bottom of these bottles. You're going to take your bottle and fill to this line right here. It is a good idea to leave the stream kind of slow so that you don't fill your bottle too fast and end up with dye all over your sink. As you can see, I've now filled the bottle to the top line, and then I'm going to put on my cap. Make sure that it's screwed on really tight so that you don't get dye all over the bathroom or wherever you might be shaking the bottles. I do recommend to do it outside and to leave that tip on until you're ready to dye. So you're going to shake your bottle and check the bottom. You can see there that there's powder left, so I know that it's not all mixed up. Sometimes you have to shake it in different directions and swirl it around so that you can get that dye to move. Every once in a while you do have to pinch the bottom of the bottle to get the powder to move around, but normally shaking it around does a pretty good job. I do happen to find that for some reason blue is a little bit harder to get unstuck compared to the other colors. Alright, so I'm just double checking to make sure that it's all mixed up, and we're good. Up next, we're going to talk about spiraling a t-shirt. So here you can see me starting in the center of a t-shirt and tightly twisting to make that spiral shape. It does kind of get hard to turn with the bigger shirt, and it's hard to keep tight, so you might want an adult's help for this process. As you can see with my left hand, I'm tucking in the sleeves of the shirt. That tends to be the hardest part, is because those are left on the outside. You're probably going to need at least one other person to help you put the rubber bands on if you've never done this before, because it can get kind of difficult. Once I get that rubber band on, I am going to adjust the shirt a little bit to try and keep everything tucked in as tight as possible. And you can see I put it across the middle of the shirt. Now I'm going to add the second one, and I'm just going to do my best to keep those sleeves tucked in. They don't have to be perfect. Every shirt and anything else you dye is completely unique. So depending on where the piece of cloth is tucked in will change the color it is and give your shirt a totally unique look. As you can see, I'm onto my third rubber band. For most people who do spiral t-shirts, they use about 4 rubber bands to create this look because it will give them the option to dye each individual section. It'll look similar to how you would cut a round cake or a pie for the holidays. Now I'm going to count out the different sections so I make sure that I can see each one of them before I try and dye it. Alright, and so now you can see how I've got it divided up and how they cross in the center. On the back, sometimes they don't line up perfectly because you are trying to match the front. That's okay, it's pretty close and it's not going to matter in the end. Now we get to see my friend Rayanne spin her shirt and see how she does it. While Rayanne is tying up her shirt, I just want to give a reminder to everybody that we did go outside to do this, and we put down a tablecloth on top of our table, and we did it over concrete so that it was something that was easier to clean up. You can do this in the grass as well. I've done it many times, and as long as you just rinse it away when you're done, it doesn't do any damage to your yard either. Other than maybe you might have purple grass for a day or two. As you can see, the shirt Rayanne is using is smaller than the one that I just used. However, any size shirt is fine, so it doesn't matter if this is an adult size shirt or a kid size shirt. Actually, you can even tie-dye baby onesies, which you'll get to see later in the video. Sometimes opening these bottles can be a little bit difficult, so do be careful when you open them because it might splatter. You probably want to wear old clothes that can get dirty. Alright, now Rayanne is starting to put the dye into her shirt. She wants a really bold, bright shirt that is a rainbow design. So she's going to use quite a bit of dye in each of those sections to make sure that her shirt is completely saturated so that she has very little white spots on it. The more dye that you use, the darker your shirt will be. The less dye you use, the more white your shirt will be. Later on in this video, you'll get to see an example of a spiral that has a lot of dye and a little bit of dye. And it's totally your choice however you want yours to look. Now that Rayanne is onto her fourth color, you can kind of see that it's making a mess on the table. When you use plastic tablecloths and plastic gloves, which Rayanne forgot to put on here, she does make a little bit of a mess, and the plastic causes it to kind of pool instead of soak into anything. So do be careful that if you set your white fabric down on top of those puddles, you will end up with that dye in the white spots. So if you don't want that, you might want to wipe up after every color or just be really, really careful. As you can see, Rayanne has now moved on to the back side of her t-shirt. As said earlier, she does want it to be as dark and pigmented as possible. So if that's what you're going for, make sure you dye both the front and the back of your spiral tied up shirt. If you don't really care about how dark the back is, you don't need to dye the back. But if you're looking for something that's super colorful, it is recommended to do that so you make sure that the shirt has as much color as possible. So keep in mind that while Rayanne's shirt may have been done in a rainbow style, you do not have to do that. You can do one color, two colors, three colors. It can be whatever you want. If you just want pink and white or pink and blue or purple and green, whatever you may want, you can do that. We just happen to use a lot of colors so you can see how bright and variegated that you can make your shirts. Alright, so it looks like Rayanne is done, and now you can see the front and back of her shirt has very little white on it. Rayanne also decided that she'd like to try and tie-dye some socks. Her favorite color is pink, so we happen to have two different shades of pink that we mixed, and she's going to be using those now to try and make her socks. The way she did this is she just rolled her socks up and then tied them with the same rubber band technique as she did with the t-shirt. I'm going to recommend that you make sure that you have either plastic Walmart or Meijer or whatever grocery store you use at home, those bags to use to put your items in once they have the dye on them, because you are going to have to let them sit. And this is a good way to keep the dye from getting on anything else or staining anything else while you let the dye seep into the fabric. Here we have the final tied up product. The recommended time to let your shirt or any object you've dyed sit out is going to be somewhere between 6 and 12 hours. Some people even prefer 24 to make sure that the dye has plenty of time to soak in and give you the right pigment color that you would like. Alright, so here you guys can see me untying a tie-dyed baby onesie that I did for my little sister. I did do rainbow on this one as well. It is a little bit hard to see in this video, but the purpose is to show you how to rinse these out. I happen to rinse this in my bathroom sink, and you can see that there's a lot of color coming out of there. If you've left a lot of white in your shirt, do be careful because the colors can run when you start to rinse. And you want to make sure that it's okay to rinse in your sink that's white, because it can cause a little bit of staining. It does come out with really easy cleaning techniques, but if you have a stainless steel sink, that's a better option to do indoor cleaning. You're going to want the water to run clear before you quit rinsing out your shirts. As another alternative to rinsing inside, you can use a hose. It does have higher pressure and makes it easier to get all of that dye out. However, you will get wet. Here we have Rayanne's finished shirt. As you can see, it's really dark. And then her socks are really dark in the toes and light at her ankles. Here's the tied up shirt from the baby onesie. And then here's the rinsed out product. So you can see it's pretty bright too. The shirt that you're seeing now was done by an 8-year-old, and it does have a lot more white space than the one Rayanne and I made. This one did not have nearly as much dye added to it and was a lot more sporadic and just kind of got polka dotted with the dye in the process. This is a way to get a really unique looking shirt and still get the spiral if you don't want a ton of color. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see your guys' tie-dye creations.